Well, good evening again. Three times in a row in one night. But this message brings us up to date. This is the message that was shared on Easter Sunday morning. And we had a number of readings. I've put them in the description again so that you can see we were doing the readings from John's Gospel, looking at his time being at when the ladies, particularly Mary, went to the tomb and tried to find him, and that Jesus had risen from the dead. I'm picking up from John 21, verses 1 to 14. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your nets out on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. And this is the word of the Lord. I only shared a short message on Easter Sunday morning, similar to Good Friday. I believe in allowing the text to speak for itself. But I made one particular observation. I am aware that on Easter Sunday morning, as on Good Friday, it is a time when people often come to church because, well, it's Easter Sunday morning and you should go to church on Easter Sunday morning. Or because perhaps the wife has invited them, or because mum or dad invited them. And so they're there because they think they should do it. And sometimes as they go back to church, they go, "Yep, we're still sitting on the same pews we sat on when I was a kid. And hey, look, I can even see the little picture that I drew 10, 15 years ago." There's a sense in which they're going home, and there's often a feeling of familiarity with that in a positive way. But sometimes also a sense of, yep, nothing much has changed. I wonder if the disciples felt that as well. Now, it's interesting, the disciples had experienced the most amazing miracle of all time. Jesus had risen from the dead. Jesus had conquered the grave. And yet, what do they do? Peter says, "I'm going out fishing." The other disciples go, "Yeah, we'll tag along too." Peter was going back to doing what he felt comfortable with. He is going back to his old life. He was a fisherman. He was good at his job. He was good at his job, and one of the few confusing times he ever had going fishing was that time 3 or more years ago when they'd gone fishing. They hadn't caught a single thing for the whole night. But then some teacher, this new teacher that he'd met, said, "Hey, can I use your boat? Can you push me out from shore a bit?" So they got pushed out from shore, and Jesus taught from the fishing boat. And if you want to read this, you can find it in Luke chapter 6. But this is how Jesus called his disciples for the first time, at least those initial group. Because he turned to Peter and he said, "Push out from the shore and let down your nets." And Peter had been like, "Mate, hate to break it to you, but I'm a fisherman and we have caught nothing all night, and you are a carpenter. When it comes to fishing, I'm going to trust my judgment. But Peter, perhaps to humor Jesus, or perhaps because he recognized something in Jesus with authority, he said, but because you ask, we will let down our nets. So he lets down their nets, and all of a sudden there is this great catch of fish, and they signal to the other boat, come out and give us a hand. They've got too many fish here. And they filled the boats to the point where they were overflowing, or they were starting to sink. And Peter, in that moment, recognized, you are more than I thought you were. I am a person who catches fish. You seem to be the one who controls fish. That scares me. And he said, depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. But Jesus comforted him and said, no, you come and follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of people. Not just a fisherman of fish. I'll make you a fisher of people. So Jesus sets Peter on a new life task. And Jesus, in his teaching and in his life, gave Peter an example to aspire to. But even far more than that, Jesus was to be the Messiah. Peter recognized that. Peter was positioned given a position of authority. He was pretty much the ruler or boss of the disciples under Jesus. And yet, at that critical moment when Jesus was betrayed, Peter denied knowing Jesus. He did it 3 times, so there was no mistake. He denied knowing Jesus. And maybe Peter has gone out fishing because, well, okay, Jesus has risen from the dead, and that's wonderful, but my life's not the same. And this story reminds us that Jesus meets us where we're at. Jesus says, welcome back. Welcome home. For some of us, we hear the story of Easter again and we think, could that possibly be relevant for me? Could that really apply to me? I've wandered away. I've done my own thing. I gave up knowing Jesus when I was in school, and it's been a long time since then. And to you, the message is, come back. In the story that we just heard, Jesus gives them again a demonstration of his power, and perhaps deliberately reminding them of how he called them the first time. And John, being the slightly quicker of the two in terms of thought, recognizes what's happening. He says, it's the Lord. For all Peter's fears, for all his concerns, this time he doesn't shrink back and say, depart from me, for I am a sinful man. Peter knows that, but he had also seen Jesus forgive time and time again over 3 years. And so he gets into that water and he tries to get to Jesus as quickly as possible. And I didn't read it in the story, but you can find it in the rest of John 21. Jesus reinstates Peter to his position of authority, his position as the lead shepherd under Jesus as being the good shepherd. Peter will care for Jesus' sheep. But it's really important to recognize that Jesus did receive Peter back. He didn't say, get your life together and then come back to me. He met him where he was, even as he was struggling to know what to do and had simply gone out to do fishing again. I don't know where you're at. I don't know whether Easter Sunday for you is the most wonderful celebration and you just love the story of Jesus rising from the dead. It is the one hope that gets you up in the morning and it encourages you and it keeps you going. Or did you come along on Easter Sunday morning? Or maybe even you somehow found this channel and thought, oh, it was Easter, I probably should listen to something. And you've thought afresh. I haven't thought about that story since Mum and Dad used to take me to church. Or I heard about it at Sunday school. Jesus wants to welcome you back. He wants you to put your trust in him. And all you need to do is go to him. I encourage you to do that. And if you would like some help with that, please contact me. Contact a good local church near you. A good local church is a church which loves Jesus and helps you to understand Jesus better through the Bible. Chat with a pastor there or a friend who you know loves Jesus and get them to help you to come to Jesus yourself. He'd love to welcome you. God bless you and good night.